Commander Dunning, it's been a long time.
How are you? I won't call you Petty Officer Jenkins. I'll just call you Pete.
So today we have with us Commander Zoe Dunning, who has quite interesting and unique experience. In January of '93, she was a graduate student at Stanford in their business school when she announced her sexual orientation in a rally of support for Petty Officer Keith Meinhold. And at that time, there was a policy called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And in June of 1993, there was a 3-member Navy Administrative Board recommended that she be honorably discharged despite arguments that the action violated a federal judge's ruling the previous winter. Commander Dunning appealed and argued she made a statement of her status, not her conduct. In '94, there was another 3-member Navy Administrative Board that met at Treasure Island and unanimously agreed with Commander Dunning's argument, and she didn't violate the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. So her unique position was that she was able to be promoted between these hearings and was able to actually stay in the Navy and retire from the Navy. What am I missing here?
I think that summarizes it nicely. Yeah, my first discharge hearing was under the policy prior to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They voted to kick me out, but they then announced Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and they're like, "Well, we can't kick her out for a policy that's now been supplanted by a new one." So my second hearing was one of the first half dozen cases tried under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And there wasn't a whole lot of clarity as to what it took to discharge or prosecute or defend one of these cases. And so I won my case, but I ended up winning it only for myself and not being able to change the policy on behalf of all, which is what my goal was.
And since this time, Commander Dunning has served with the Service Members Legal Defense Fund, as well as a host of other organizations, and was actually on stage when President Obama signed the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the reason why I started off the way I did was we actually served together at Treasure Island, right around this time that all this was going on. Anyway, with no further whatever here, I just it's good to see you again. Thank you for coming on to interview with us, and we'd like to hear a little bit more about what it was like for yourself and what the numbers are with regards to the microaggressions, transgressions, whatever it's called, for service members.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I entered the military in '81, I entered the Naval Academy. And at that time, the Naval Investigative Service was actively hunting and looking for gays and lesbians to sort of ferret them out. We would go to a lesbian bar and we would put a bumper sticker on our DOD parking sticker on the car to make sure, because they would go into the parking lots and like look for license plates in cars. They would intercept mail. I had a friend who was actually discharged from the Naval Academy because her roommate confiscated her diary and turned it into the authorities. So with that as background, I chose to transition from active duty to the reserves so that I didn't have to live in that constant fear day in and day out. When you're in that kind of a situation or environment, you'll get what seems like a fairly innocent note that says the executive officer wants to see you. And if you're hiding the fact that you're gay or lesbian in the military, you're terrified that this is the day that they found out about you and that you're going to go in and be told that you're going to be kicked out. You hear in the hallways of your ship, anti-gay comments and jokes and things like that, and you can't say anything. You talk about your partner in gender neutral terms, or even switch the gender to try to evade. And so it was just, I think I and many others who served under these policies that prevented gays and lesbians from serving openly really suffered these sort of death by 1,000 tiny cuts, this day in, day out of having to separate your personal life from your work life. And I think that I know has definitely left a residue, for me in terms of emotional and psychological well-being. And I think it impacts a lot of women. Most people don't realize that, don't ask, don't tell, and these policies had a disproportionate impact on women and minorities. A couple of statistics I looked up before this is that in 2008, 45% of the troops who were discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell were people of color or minorities, but only 30% of the service are minorities. In 2009, 14% of the Army were women, but 48% of the discharges of women were overall were of women in Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In the Marine Corps in 2009, only 6% of the Marine Corps was women, but they were 23% of the discharges. So this policy was not only anti-gay, but it was also very anti-women and had a disproportionate impact and effect on women. So when I do the work that I do now around advocating for veterans, advocating for the LGBTQ community, I have a particular passion and interest around women veterans and the issues that they face.
Great, thank you. And do you can you say anything about programs that, whether it's the VA or what the VA doesn't do, and how other nonprofits, which, some nonprofits are more legislatively oriented and some are more service oriented, direct service oriented. Can you say that where all that stuff fits together?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of organizations that are trying to address veterans issues holistically, and then some focus on, women, or may focus on other areas. I have the pleasure of serving on the California Veterans Board, and our role is to look at all of the services and offerings that the state of California offers veterans. And I serve on the subcommittee for women and underrepresented minorities, in particular, to make sure that our services and our benefits are meeting the needs of our women veterans. It's particularly difficult in, we have sort of like the coastal areas where there's, probably a little bit more knowledge and interest and experience around what the special needs are for women veterans. But we still have today, VA centers where women who were victims of sexual abuse or rape within the military are forced to sit in waiting rooms with other men while they wait for psychological services, or VA centers that don't necessarily have the right services to meet their transgender community members. And so there's still holes in the system, holes in the various different organizations to really address, women's issues, and in particular, lesbian and bisexual and transgender women's issues. So it's really important and critical that, that community has a safe space to go and understand and examine, what their military service meant to them, how that has impacted them, what it means for them today, and how they cope in the world, and kind of getting back in touch with, who they are, because the military sort of molds you into, kind of where we'll break you and rebuild you, right? And what they rebuild you into isn't necessarily what you want to stay or be. It served its purpose when you were in the military, but it doesn't necessarily serve you now, and just trying to get around with life. So, I think having organizations, having facilities, having services that really create that safe space for women, and particularly gay, lesbian, and bisexual women, is critically important, so that they can sort of heal from what that must have been like to serve in the military under those environments.
Great. Thanks for putting words to where the 1,000 tiny cuts. I think that's part of what we do, is let people show those cuts and help heal those cuts in the services that we offer. And it is, it's day in, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for as long as you served. It's 1,000 tiny cuts. Well said. Well said.
Yeah. Is
there anything else that you would want to say to whoever might be watching this?
Well, I think, there's so much need in the world, right? There's so many different opportunities for us to contribute, donate our time, donate our money. And it's all very personal. But I think if you look at those who have been somewhat left behind, and I have a particular affection for veterans issues, because I heard someone once define a veteran as someone who at one point in their life walked into a recruiter's office and signed a blank check payable to the American people up to and including their own life. And so I take this community very seriously. These are people who love our country so much that we have stepped up. We have been willing to give our lives for this country. And our country has betrayed many veterans in return. These ongoing conflicts that seem to never end overseas, using up, sending you out to war and then coming back and not providing the psychological and physical support that you need as you recover from it. So I think any money that's invested in your organization that's going to help, in particular, women vets, underrepresented minorities, BIPOC community, LGBTQ community. Those are the folks that are in general getting left behind and where the safety net's not capturing them. And I think we owe it to veterans, and particularly women veterans who've been through a hell of a lot just to serve, to make sure that, we pay them back by helping them heal.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.